for this video, I'm going to show how to create flowers on either dip nails, or you can also do it on gel polish nails. Here I have a couple of examples that I've done. This shows an example of an unfinished matte coat look. This I did over a matte gel polish, and I finished it with a gel polish top coat. And then on this example, I did it over an activated dip powder nail, and then proceeded after the nail art, I covered it or encapsulated it in a base coat, and then activated it, and then covered it in a dip top coat, which is how I'm going to show this tutorial. So here is a dip powder that has been activated and buffed out. For the color, I used a color from Double Dip. The color is Magnolia, and it's a pretty pastel purple color. I got this from their pastel color starter kit, and it comes with 6 colors. So what we're going to start with is some white acrylic paint, and you can use any acrylic paint that you want color-wise, and you want to go ahead and water it down. And for consistency, you're looking for pretty thin. You'll kind of get to know what specifically consistency you're looking for as you get started, but we will go ahead and jump in. You also want to have a pretty fine-tipped brush that we're going to be working with. And so we'll kind of set these just over here to the side. So we can kind of, maybe I'll set them right here so we can still see them. There we go. So what we're going to do is we're going to do petals in 2 different layers. So for our first layer, we're going to do a coat of 3. And so we're going to go ahead and draw our first petal. And when you dip your brush into the paint, the top of the liquid is going to be less concentrated, and then the bottom of the container is going to be more concentrated. And so you'll want to take a look, and with more experience, you'll figure out what you like the best and which one's going to work for what you're looking for. And if you have too much liquid on your brush, you just dab it onto the paper towel. And so we'll go ahead and get started with our first petal. And with anything artistic, there's no right or wrong way. Each petal is going to be unique. So there is our first petal. And then I always dab the leftover liquid onto the paper towel. And we're going to let this dry. And what that is doing is it's allowing the outside of the petal to start drying. That's the portion that dries first. And we want our petals to be, they're going to be, translucent and pretty much see-through, obviously the translucent part. So we're letting, as you can see, the outside layer, the outline is a little bit darker, and so that's what we're allowing to happen, but we're letting it just kind of sit there. And so you give that a minute, and then what you're going to do is take the tip of your brush, and you're going to dab the extra liquid, and then you're going to brush it onto your paper towel, and then go back and pick up a little bit more. And then you get to decide how much you're going to leave on. The more liquid you leave on your brush, or the swatch / nail, is the more you leave on, the darker it's going to be. The more you take off, the more translucent it's going to be. So you want that to go ahead and dry completely before you go into your second petal, if they are going to touch. If they're not going to touch at all, you can go ahead and start your second petal. What happens if the first one's not dry before you start your second petal is if they end up touching, the liquid from the second petal will meld into the first petal. And generally, you want them on the first layer at least to stand alone and be individual. So we'll go ahead, and that's just drying there for a second. Okay, and we'll go ahead and soak some of that up. we go. Perfect, so we have our second petal. So we'll go ahead and get ready for our third petal. Pull that down. There we go. So we'll kind of let that dry for a second. And then we'll soak that up. And then once the third petal is dry, and we're gonna go ahead and go in with the second layer, which is gonna be 3 more that are gonna overlap the first 3. And then once we're done with those 3, we're gonna go in and decide what we might wanna do with the very middle of the flower. You can take a dotting tool with some paint and dab your middles. I have a Sharpie paint pen that can be dabbed, or another thing you can do is if you want to use glitters like what I have on my thumb. I took glitter that was corresponding with my finger and my pinky and put those for middle parts on those flowers. We'll go ahead and pick, that's dry, we'll pick these up. So there's lots of little different options just depending on the look that you want it to have. Perfect. So while that third petal is drying, I'm going to go over to this side since these 2 are dry, and we'll do our petal over here. So we'll grab some of our paint, dab the excess. And I'm going to overlap those to create that look. There we go. Now, one thing that you can do when you're doing this, if you go to take off the extra liquid and you realize that the petal that you just did doesn't have as much color concentration as you would like it to, you can go back into your liquid and get more and put it back into that petal, because what's going to happen is so I'm going to go ahead and dab more liquid into this one, which is where I was. The liquid's going to stay within the boundaries of the petal that you've created as long as you don't have way too much liquid. And then you can let it dry a little bit more, and then when you soak it up, it'll be a little bit darker or more concentrated. So that's just a little trick in case you need to get a more concentrated petal. So we'll dab that up and let that dry. And then we'll come over here and add this petal. Let's see. Oh my goodness, we're in the midst of the corona stay-at-home stuff, and so I can hear my son in the other room. He's playing a video game. I have no idea if the microphone will pick that up or not, so if you hear the random exclamation, it's my 7-year-old being crazy. Here we go. So that one looks great. So we'll go ahead and soak that up. Perfect. And then we'll go ahead and do the final petal. Dab that off. Let's see. And then we're almost done with this, and then we'll do the middle section. Okay, so that leaked over into the petal that we just did because it just had a, I mean, it had an avenue to go. So it's not a big deal. I just wanted to illustrate that it did that just to show you. And that's just because it found a way to connect and there was a wet petal because I didn't give it time to dry, but that's okay. It didn't ruin the look at all. It still looks fantastic. So we'll let that dry for a second. We'll pick that up. There we go. And so we'll let those dry and we'll cover our paint. Set that to the side. And I just have a little container of clear water that I was going to clean my brush with, or if you find that you want to add more color to thin out your container of diluted paint, I always just have a little container I can add water from. So once this dries, we'll figure out what we want to do with our middle. I do have this Sharpie white extra fine paint pen that will work, or if you want a contrasting color, we could use a black Sharpie for the middles, or you could use glitter. I think I tried white last time and it didn't do much, so I think we'll try black Sharpie. And I don't have a black paint Sharpie, so we'll just do a regular black and see if that does anything. Make sure everything's good here. And we'll see if that dried enough. And we'll just take a look. There you go. Just a tiny bit of a contrast. Perfect. So then what we're going to do next, because that is dry, we are going to take our base coat, and this is by Double Dip, and we are going to encapsulate, which is going to just protect our art. Oops, that bottle squeaked. So we're going to take a coat of that, and we're going to go ahead and, I don't want to knock over my base coat, so we're just going to give a nice coat of that to encapsulate it. So there we go. That kind of made the ink on the black a little bit brighter, which is kind of interesting. So one fun thing, or at least one thing I find fun, is the whole experimentation with doing different arts with the nails, kind of just see what happens. So we're going to take the activator and just go over the base. And the artwork's protected, so it's not, you know, with the base, so it's not gonna, nothing will affect the artwork at this point. And then from here we'll take our top coat. Oh, that's the base. We'll take our top coat. So after I use activator on a nail, I always take a paper towel and I rub it. This one's kind of goopy. I've been using that one for a while. I always take a paper towel and I will rub it off. And that's just rubbing in any extra activator and then rubbing off any extra activator. And then when I use a top dip coat, one thing that I always do is after I use the brush on an activated nail, I always wipe the brush on a paper towel so that I don't contaminate my top coat. So we will go ahead and just brush this on. And the first coat of top coat is pretty quick, just 1, 2, 3 swipes. And let that dry for a minute. I really like the contrast of the black in the middle. And I'll show you the comparison between this one and the other swatches I did. So then we'll go in with our second coat, which is more slowly applied, the more detailed. This is the one that's going to be your shine on your nail. And give that a second to dry. And I already took my pictures for the banner, so you won't see that in the pictures, but that's beautiful. I really like that. But there you go. That's how you add flowers, flower art, to your dip powder or your gel. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments and I'll definitely get back to you. Thanks for watching.